Number 45, Society for the Psychological Study of Ethnic Minority Issues, Media Psychology, Exercise and Sports Psychology, Society for the Study of Peace, Conflict, and Violence, Peace Psychology Division, Group Psychology and Group Psychotherapy, Addictions, Society for the Psychological Study of Men and Masculinity, Internal Psychology, Society of Clinical Child and Adolescent Psychology, Society of Pediatric Psychology, American Society for the Advancement of Pharmacotherapy, 56, finally, is Trauma Psychology, which, as you can see, just by these 56, there are so many more than we could ever think of. When I saw this list, I was like, dang, I might be interested in psychology now. But anyways, I'm going to go in a little more detail about a few of these different ones I had listed off. So, clinical psychologists, they promote psychological health in individuals, groups, or organizations. Some clinical psychologists specialize in specific psychological disorders. Clinical psychologists might engage in research, teaching, assessment, and consultation. Clinical psychologists work in a variety of settings, including private practice, mental health service organizations, schools, universities, industries, legal systems, medical systems, council centers, government agencies, and also military services. So to become a clinical psychologist, you will need to earn a doctorate from a clinical psychology program. Next, we're on to cognitive psychologists. They study the thought processes and focus on such topics as perception, language, attention, problem solving, memory, judgment, and decision making, forgetting, and also intelligence. As a cognitive psychologist, you might work as a professor, industrial consultant, or human factor specialist in an educational or business setting. Next is, cognitive psychologists also may advise businesses on how to operate more efficiently by understanding the human factors involved. Community psychologists move beyond focusing on the specific individuals or families and deal with the broad problems of mental health in community settings. These psychologists believe that human behavior is powerfully influenced by the interaction between people and their physical, social, political, and economic environments. Community psychologists focus on prevention, promotion of positive mental health, and crisis intervention, with special attention to the problems of unserved groups and ethnic minorities. As a community psychologist, your work settings could include federal, state, and local departments of mental health, corrections, and welfare systems. You might conduct research to help evaluate research in health service settings, serve as an independent consultant for a private or government agency, or teach and consult as a college or university faculty member. Counseling psychologists help people adjust to life transitions or make lifestyle changes. And this field is very similar to clinical psychology, except that the counseling psychologists typically help people with adjustment problems rather than severe psychopathology, my bad. Like clinical psychologists, counseling psychologists conduct therapy and provide assessments to individuals and groups. As a counseling psychologist, you would emphasize your clients' strengths, helping clients cope during a transitional time using their own skills, interests, and abilities. As with clinical psychology, if you plan to work in independent practice, you will need to obtain a state license to provide counseling services to the public. Next is developmental psychologists. They conduct research in age-related behavioral changes and the changes that we have to go through as we're growing up, and apply their scientific knowledge to educational, child care, policy, and related settings. You would investigate change across a broad range of topics, including the biological, social, psychological, and cognitive aspects of development. As a health psychologist, you could be employed. That completely just changed. My bad. Next, back to developmental psychologist. You would probably specialize in behavior during infancy, childhood, adolescence, or middle or adulthood. Your work setting could be an educational institution, daycare center, youth group program, or senior center. Next is educational psychologist. They study the relationship between learning and our physical and social environments. The study of psychological processes involved in learning and develop strategies for enhancing our learning processes. You might conduct basic research on topics that are related to learning or develop innovative methods of teaching to enhance the learning process. Experimental psychologists investigate a variety of basic behavioral processes and research involving humans and other animals. Prominent areas of study and experimental research include comparative methods of science, motivation, learning, thought, attention, memory, perception, and also language. The experimental method for conducting research studies is not limited to the field of experimental psychology. Next would be forensic psychologist, which I was really interested in because I want to be in law enforcement. But forensic psychologists apply psychological principles to legal issues. They conduct research on the interface of law and psychology, help to create public policies related to mental health, help law enforcement agencies in criminal investigations, or assist in forensic consultation involving jury selection and deliberation research. Some forensic psychologists hold law degrees and provide clients with legal services as well. As a forensic psychologist, you might work in a university, psychology department, law school, research organization, community mental health agency, law enforcement agency, court, or a correctional setting. Health psychologists, here we go, are researchers and practitioners concerned with psychology's contribution to promoting health and preventing diseases. They may help individuals lead healthier lives by designing, conducting, and evaluating programs for things such as to help someone stop smoking, to lose weight, improve their sleep, to also manage pain, treat associated psychosocial problems with chronic and terminal illness, or also to prevent the spread of sexually transmitted infections. They identify conditions and practices associated with health and illness to help create effective interventions. As a health psychologist, you would be employed in a hospital, medical school, rehabilitation center, public health agency, or a college or a university. Next is industrial organization psychologist. They study the relationship between people and their working environments, and their interests include organizational structure and change, consumer behavior, and personal selection and training. A neuropsychologist investigates the relationship between neurological processes, so that's like the structure and function of our brain, and behavior. As a neuropsychologist, you might assess, diagnose, or treat disorders related to the central